The night Claire Donovan nearly died, she was thinking about bread. Not about the man behind her. Not about the footsteps she had been pretending not to hear for the last half block. She was thinking about the loaf of sourdough saved for her from the kitchen wrapped in brown paper and sitting in the canvas bag over her shoulder, and whether Noah would eat it plain or want butter, and whether she had remembered to buy butter, and whether the electric bill was going to clear before her next direct deposit. That was what survival looked like after 17 months. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a woman walking home in the cold counting dollars in her head, carrying bread for a boy who had not spoken a word since August, 2 years ago. She heard him before she saw him. She always heard Derek before she saw him. That was the thing about men like Derek Hollis. They believed their own patience was a kind of power. They moved slowly on purpose. They wanted you to know they were coming. They wanted the fear to arrive before they did. Her keys were already in her hand. She had learned that 17 months ago, too. He came around the corner of the alley and stepped directly into her path, and in the orange wash of the single working street lamp behind Vance's restaurant, his face looked exactly the way it always looked when he had rehearsed something. Pleasant on the surface, wrong underneath. The eyes, too bright, too fixed. The eyes of a man who had decided how this conversation was going to go and was very interested in whether she had figured that out yet. She had. Working late again, he said. His voice was conversational. That was the part people never understood about men like Derek. The voice was always conversational, being the good little martyr. Claire stopped walking. She did not turn around because turning around was a form of engagement, and engagement was what he wanted. She said his name quietly. She said, "Don't." Don't what he said, and came around to stand directly in front of her. Even in the January cold, even with the wind off Lake Michigan, turning her breath to vapor, she could see the particular quality in his eyes that she had learned to read the way sailors read weather. It meant he had made a decision before he arrived. It meant this was not a conversation. She tried to step around him. He caught her arm. That was when it started. She had filed 3 police reports in 17 months. The first officer had been sympathetic. The second had been tired. The third had used the word complicated in a way that meant he was done with this conversation, and she should be too. She had obtained a protective order from the Cook County Circuit Court in November. The clerk who processed her paperwork had looked at her with the particular expression of someone who processed a great many protective orders and understood exactly how much weight a piece of paper carried in a dark alley at 11 o'clock at night. Not much. Not when the man holding your arm has decided tonight is the night. Derek was not shouting. That was the thing. He never shouted. He shoved her backward into the brick wall of the alley with the measured efficiency of someone who had done this before, and when she tried to push him away, he caught her wrist at an angle that sent electric pain shooting up to her shoulder, and he leaned in close and his voice dropped to something almost gentle. "You think you can keep him from me," he said. "You think because a judge signed something that means you win. He is not yours, Claire. He was never yours. Maya would have wanted me to have him, you know that." She said very quietly, "Do not say her name." Something changed in his face. He hit her then, not a warning, a real punch aimed at her ribs, and Claire felt the breath leave her body in the particular way that meant something was either cracked or very close to it, and she went down the wall slowly, her knees finding the wet pavement, and the canvas bag tipped over, and the brown paper split open and the sourdough scattered across the alley floor in the dirty snow. She stared at it. She thought with the strange floating clarity that comes when the body has used up its adrenaline and is simply trying to function, that Noah would not have bread for breakfast. Derek crouched down in front of her. He grabbed her chin and tilted her face up to his, and the lamplight caught the bruise already forming below her cheekbone, and he looked at it with no expression at all. "Here is what is going to happen," he said softly. "You are going to call the school tomorrow and tell them I am on the pickup list, and then you are going to step back and let things go back to how they should be. And if you do not," he pressed his thumb against the bruise, "then next time I will not stop at 1. Claire said nothing. She was calculating. Distance to the street. Whether her legs would hold. Whether screaming would bring anyone before he reached her again. She was deciding she could not make it when the headlights came. The car that turned into the alley was large and black and very expensive. The kind of vehicle that had no reason to be behind a restaurant at 11 at night unless it specifically wanted to be there. The engine cut, a door opened. Derek straightened up. He shielded his eyes against the lights. His voice shifted to something more careful. "Mind your own business," he said. "This is a private conversation." The voice that answered did not come from a man who had ever needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. "Step away from her." 4 words, that was all. But the quality of them stopped everything. The wind, the distant traffic, the ordinary noise of a Chicago night, all of it seemed to pause the way sound pauses at the moment before something irreversible happens. 2 men materialized from beside the car. Large men in dark coats, moving with the particular unhurried certainty of people who are paid to be unhurried, because they are also paid to be certain. They positioned themselves on either side of Derek without touching him. They did not need to touch him. Their presence alone changed the geometry of the alley. Derek's laugh faded. The man from the darkness stepped forward. He was tall, dark suit, no tie, a shirt that cost more than Claire's monthly rent. Black hair threaded at the temples with the first silver of a man in his mid-40s who had spent those years doing something that aged you in specific ways. His face would have been conventionally handsome if it carried any warmth at all. It did not. Not cruelty exactly, but the practiced absence of anything soft. The way very old stone is smooth because everything yielding has been worn away from it over a very long time. He looked at Claire first. Just looked. The way you look at something you are filing away permanently. Then his eyes moved to Derek, and whatever assessment he made took approximately 3 seconds. And at the end of those 3 seconds, Derek Hollis had been measured and categorized and found unsurprisingly disappointing, all without a single change in expression. "This is my property," the man said. "She works in my restaurant, which means she is in a manner of speaking under my roof." He paused. "You put your hands on a woman under my roof." Derek was recalibrating. Claire could see it, the recognition clicking into place, the name above the door, the men who moved like furniture, the quality of stillness in the man standing before him. "Listen," Derek started, his voice losing its edges. "I do not want any trouble. This is between me and her." "That stopped being true," the man said approximately 2 minutes ago. He turned slightly toward the larger of the 2 men. "Reeves, take her inside. Get someone to look at her." Reeves moved to Claire with a gentleness that did not match his size. A large hand careful lifted her by the elbow. She tried to put weight on her own legs. They cooperated unevenly. She turned back once as she was guided toward the restaurant's rear entrance. Derek was standing between the 2 men now, and he did not look like someone who was going to be driving home anytime soon. The man in the dark suit had not moved. He was watching Claire be taken inside. Not with concern, not with satisfaction. Something more precise than either. The expression of a man making a note. Their eyes met for one moment. She did not know his name yet. She did not know what he was capable of. She did not know that by morning Derek Hollis would have a very clear and very permanent understanding of consequences. What she knew was this: something had shifted. The world she had woken up in that morning and the world she was walking into through this back door were not the same world, and there was no direction to walk but forward. The kitchen smelled like garlic and rosemary, and the residual warmth of a service that had ended 2 hours ago. The staff had gone home. A woman appeared with a first aid kit before Claire had time to wonder where she had come from. Compact, efficient, in her 50s, with the particular energy of someone who had managed large households long enough that nothing surprised her anymore. "Can you tell me where it hurts most?" the woman said. Claire almost laughed. She said, pick a spot, and then immediately regretted it because even a short exhale sent pain spiraling through her left side. "Ribs," the woman noted with clinical precision. "Possibly cracked. We should get you to a hospital." "I cannot go to a hospital," Claire said. "I have to get home. I have someone I need to get back to." The woman, whose name Claire would later learn was Winifred, though everyone called her Freddie, exchanged a look with Reeves that contained an entire conversation. "Mr. Vane would like to speak with you," Reeves said, carefully, the way people say things when they mean something else entirely. "Mr. Vane," Claire repeated. She had worked in this restaurant for 2 years. She had cleared and reset the tables in the dining room 100 times. She had learned the menu in 4 languages because the clientele expected it. She had listened to the older staff go quiet whenever a certain name came up, had watched certain men move through veins, with the particular ease of people who understood that the restaurant was only the most visible and least interesting of its owner's many enterprises. She had filed all of this under "not my business" and kept her head down because keeping her head down was what kept Noah fed and housed and as close to safe as she could manage on a waitress's salary. "He does not have to," she said. "I am grateful for what happened, but he does not owe me anything." "He did not say it was optional," Reeves said, not unkindly. Claire looked at him for a moment. Then she looked down at her uniform soaked through with sleet and alley grime, at her hands still trembling, faintly from the adrenaline her body had not finished processing, at the place on her wrist where Derek's grip had left a bracelet of deep red pressure that would be dark purple by morning. She thought about Noah asleep at Mrs. Patterson's apartment 2 floors down, where Claire had arranged emergency childcare 3 times this month alone. She thought about Derek's thumb on her bruise. She thought about the particular flatness in his voice when he said next time. "All right," she said quietly. "Tell him I will speak with him." She was walked through the empty restaurant, past the table she had set, and cleared 1,000 times past the bar she had leaned against during slow Tuesday shifts, when the dining room was half empty and the night stretched out slow and quiet. Past the framed photographs she had dusted without ever really looking at. Through a door at the back of the building that she had always assumed led to storage. It did not lead to storage. The room was small and well-furnished and smelled like expensive coffee and old wood and something else underneath like iron and clean linen and years of controlled decisions made in quiet. A desk completely clear except for a phone and a glass of water. 2 chairs, a single lamp throwing light that was warm without being welcoming. The man from the alley was sitting behind the desk, jacket on the back of his chair. His hands were folded on the surface in front of him. He was watching her come through the door with the expression of a man waiting to see what she would do next. "Sit down," he said. "Then after a beat, please." She sat. "I am Callum Vane," he said, the formal version of the introduction. The version that meant I am establishing who I am in this room so that we understand each other. "Claire Donovan," she said, "I work your Thursday through Sunday dinner service. I have worked here for almost 2 years." Something moved in his expression. Not quite surprise, more like acknowledgement. The particular acknowledgement of a man who had just realized he had failed to notice something that had been directly in front of him for a considerable amount of time. "I know who you are," he said. "Now." She folded her hands in her lap to keep them still. "Then you know I am not in the habit of bringing trouble to my workplace. What happened tonight was not your fault," he said flatly. "The way you state a point of established fact rather than offer reassurance." "Who is he?" She told him. Not everything, the essentials. Derek had been involved with her younger sister Maya before Maya died on I-Ninity in August 2 years ago. He had decided his proximity to Maya made him family. He had been escalating for 17 months. She had done everything the system asked her to do, and the system had handed her back a piece of paper and a sympathetic shrug. Pieces of paper, Callum said, only matter to people who respect the consequences. She looked at him steadily. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. He picked up the glass of water, looked at it, set it back down. A man thinking something through from beginning to end without hurry. "You have a nephew," he said. "Noah. He is 8. He is with my neighbor tonight." Callum nodded slowly. "Then what do you need?" Claire blinked. Of all the things she had expected, dismissal, polite sympathy, a suggestion to try a different precinct, this was not among them. The question was so direct, it almost sounded simple. It was not simple. She understood that. Nothing about this room or this man was simple. "What do you need?" he said again. She looked at him. This cold, careful, dangerous man across the clear surface of his desk. And for the first time in 17 months, she told the truth. "I need Derek to stop," she said. "I need to know that when Noah goes to school tomorrow morning, Derek will not be standing at the gate. I need to sleep one night without listening for footsteps in the hallway." Her voice did not shake, but it was close. "I need someone to tell me it is going to be okay in a way that actually means something." Callum Vane looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," he said. Just that. One word. But the way he said it, the absolute unqualified weight of it, was unlike anything she had heard from any person or any system she had ever appealed to in her life. It did not sound like comfort. It sounded like a statement of fact about something that had already been decided. She did not know if she should trust it. She did not know if she could afford not to. Outside the window, Chicago was doing what Chicago did in January. Ice on the sidewalks, wind off the lake. The ordinary machinery of a city that did not pause for anyone's crisis. And in a small office at the back of a restaurant, Claire Donovan sat across from the most dangerous man she had ever met and felt for the first time in 17 months something she had almost forgotten the name of. It felt dangerously, cautiously, impossibly like relief. She did not sleep that night. She lay on the narrow couch with Noah tucked against her side, his small body finally still after the second nightmare, and she stared at the ceiling and listened to the building settle around her and tried to understand what had happened to her life in the space of 3 hours. Callum Vane had said, okay, just that one word. And then he had stood and told Reeves to drive her home, and there had been no paperwork, no conditions, no explanation of what okay actually looked like in practice or what it would cost. She had tried to ask. In the car with the city sliding past the tinted windows, she had turned to Reeves and said, "What does he want from me?" Reeves had looked straight ahead and said nothing tonight, which was not the same as nothing. She knew that. She was not a naive woman. She had worked in that restaurant for 2 years with her eyes open. She had filed everything under not my business and kept moving because moving was what kept Noah alive and housed and as whole as she could manage. But now Callum Vane had said, okay, and somewhere in Chicago, Derek Hollis was having a very different end to his evening than he had planned, and Claire was lying on her couch at 2 in the morning, trying to decide if she had traded one kind of danger for another. Noah shifted in his sleep, made a small sound. Not a word, just a breath with shape to it. Claire pulled him closer and pressed her face into his hair and thought, whatever it costs, I will pay it. She was asleep before she realized she had closed her eyes. Morning came in gray and cold. Noah was at the kitchen table when she shuffled in, still in her work clothes from the night before. His sketchbook was open. He was drawing with the focused, private intensity he brought to everything since Maya died. That concentration was one of the things that had not changed. If anything, it had deepened the way rivers deepen when their surface goes still. She stood in the doorway and watched him for a moment before he looked up. She had made herself smile. Morning bug. He looked at her face, at the bruise below her cheekbone. His eyes went very still in that particular way that meant he was processing something too large for the words he had available, or perhaps for the words he had decided somewhere in the weeks after his mother's death that he was no longer going to use. I am okay, she said before he could try to ask. I tripped. You know how clumsy I am. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked back down at his sketchbook. He picked up his pencil and in the margin of whatever he had been drawing, he wrote in his careful, deliberate 8-year-old handwriting, I know when you are lying. Claire sat down across from him. She did not have an answer for that, so she reached across the table and covered his hand with hers, and they sat in silence while the coffee brewed, and she thought, this kid is going to be okay. He has to be okay. I do not have another option. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Then she thought about the office at the back of the restaurant and the man behind the desk and the word okay, and she picked up. Miss Donovan, a voice she did not recognize. Professional, clipped, efficient. Mr. Vane would like to meet with you this afternoon. 2 o'clock at the restaurant. I work the dinner shift, she said. I cannot. You are off today, the voice said. Mr. Vane arranged it with the scheduling manager this morning. Claire stared at her coffee. He arranged my day off. 2 o'clock, the voice repeated, and the call ended. She put the phone down on the table. Noah was watching her over the top of his sketchbook with the expression he wore when he had noticed something and was deciding whether to write it down. Change of plans, she said. Mrs. Patterson is going to watch you this afternoon. Noah looked at her for a moment. Then he leaned over his sketchbook and wrote something in the margin. She leaned over to read it. Is it the man from the black car? Her chest went tight. What man from the black car? He gave her a look that was so precisely and devastatingly like Maya, that particular combination of patience and mild disbelief at having to explain something obvious that it physically hurt. He wrote the big black car. I saw it from the window when they brought you home. She had been certain he was asleep. We will talk about it later, she said. Eat your cereal. He ate his cereal. He did not close the sketchbook. Vane's at 2 in the afternoon was a different creature from Vane's at 8 on a Saturday night. The tables were bare. The lights were low. The dining room had the particular quality of a stage before the performance, everything in place but waiting, holding its breath. Claire came through the front door. She had decided on the walk over that she was not going to be afraid of this. She had also decided on the same walk that she was going to be honest about why she was afraid of it. Callum Vane was not a simple man, and this was not a simple situation, and pretending otherwise would only make her less prepared for whatever this afternoon actually was. He was already there, sitting at a corner table with his back to the wall and a clear line to both exits, which she recognized immediately as the same calculation she made whenever she sat in an unfamiliar place, just expressed differently. He had a cup of coffee in front of him and his phone face down on the table. When she walked in, he looked up with the same expression he had worn the night before. Attentive, unreadable, waiting. "You came," he said. "You arranged my schedule," she replied. It felt non-optional. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, an acknowledgement. "Please sit down." She sat. A server materialized with coffee for her without being asked, which meant Callum had noted how she took it at some point in 2 years of her working here without them ever meeting, and she filed that information carefully. "How are your ribs?" he said. "Sore." She paused. "I have had worse." His eyes moved to hers at that, just briefly. "You should not have had worse." She did not know what to do with that, so she moved past it. "What happened to Derek last night?" He had a conversation, Callum said. "He understands now that his previous behavior is not something he can continue." "That is not an answer. It is the answer I am giving you." She looked at him steadily. "Did you hurt him?" Callum picked up his coffee cup. "Set it down. He is alive and unharmed and currently reconsidering several of his life choices. Does that satisfy you?" It did not entirely. She also thought about Derek's hand on her throat, about the way he had crouched down in front of her in the alley with that gentle, patient, completely terrifying voice. Her concern for his well-being had limits she was not going to pretend otherwise about. "I need to know what you want," she said. "I do not accept help without understanding the terms. Nobody does, especially not." She stopped. "Men like me," Callum said, without inflection. "I did not mean it as an insult. I did not take it as one." He looked at her directly. "I want nothing from you, Miss Donovan. What happened in that alley was on my property to a woman who works for me. That makes it my concern. That is all. Nobody does what you did last night because of property rights," she said. He was quiet for a moment. She had the sense she had said something that landed differently than she intended, not badly, accurately, in a place he had not offered her access to. "My father," he said, "finally was killed when I was 9 years old. By a man not entirely unlike Derek Hollis in the sense that he believed violence was a reasonable solution to a disagreement. He said it with no effect. The way you say something that has been stripped of its rawness by years of controlled distance, by the practiced work of a man who had spent a long time deciding what that fact was allowed to cost him. "I saw it happen," he said. Claire said nothing. "I stopped speaking for almost a year afterward," he said. "I just stopped. Could not find the point of it." He looked down at his coffee. "A woman in our neighborhood used to leave food outside our door. Every morning for 6 months. Never knocked, never asked for anything. One day I opened the door while she was still there. I said thank you." He paused. "I still do not know why that was the first thing, it just came out." Claire was quiet for a moment. "Someone showed up," she said, "without conditions. Yes, and that was everything." She thought about Noah at the kitchen table this morning, about 17 months of sketchbooks and silence, and a little boy who communicated everything important through pencil and paper because words had become something he was no longer willing to risk. She thought about what it meant that Callum Vane had looked at that alley and not seen a liability, had looked at her and not seen an opportunity, had said okay the way someone says it when they have already decided. "You still have not told me what you want," she said. He looked at her. Then with the careful deliberateness of a man making a choice, he said, "I would like you to be safe. Both of you. I would like Derek Hollis to understand permanently that his access to you and to your nephew is finished. And I would like to offer you work that is real work with real pay so that you are not doing this alone." "What kind of work?" "The scheduling and staffing operations for Vane's currently fall to Reeves, who is not organized enough for it. I need someone with your skill set managing that remotely. It is a real position. It pays accordingly." She was quiet. She was also thinking about the electric bill and the school shoes Noah needed and the 3 times this month she had borrowed babysitting because she could not afford to not work. She was thinking about the way pride had kept her upright for 17 months and also the way it had not quite been enough. I am not taking charity, she said. It is not charity, Callum said. It is a job that needs doing. I am offering it to the person best suited for it. Take it or leave it. She looked at him for a long moment. Fine, she said, but I have conditions. He nodded. Name them. Noah does not see anything he should not see. Whatever you do, whoever comes and goes, whatever your business involves, that child is not exposed to any part of it. Agreed. I keep my apartment. I keep my independence. I am not someone you are keeping. I have never been kept, and I am not starting now. Something moved in his eyes. It looked unexpectedly like respect. The kind that does not get used very often, and therefore looks slightly unfamiliar on the face it appears on. The job is remote, he said. Your apartment, your schedule, your terms. She nodded once. Then what about Derek? You said he had a conversation. You said he understood. How long does that hold? Callum's voice did not change. It held the quality of absolute certainty that belongs to people who have arranged outcomes, not predicted them. He will be leaving Chicago, he said. By the end of the week, he has been persuaded that a different city would suit him better. And if he does not go. Callum looked at her. Just looked. He will go, he said. She believed that. Not because she trusted easily, not because she was a woman given to faith in strangers, but because there was a quality in the way this man said things that did not leave room for alternative outcomes. He was not the kind of man who predicted. He was the kind of man who decided. She drove home with her hands steady on the wheel and her mind working through the morning, the way she worked through everything, practically without the luxury of falling apart. 3 blocks from her building, her phone rang. Mrs. Patterson's number. She answered immediately. Mrs. Patterson's voice was wrong, too high, too fast. A man came to Noah's school today. They called me because I am listed as the emergency contact. He said he was Noah's uncle. He tried to take him from the pickup line. Claire's blood went cold. The teacher held Noah back. Mrs. Patterson said quickly, he is here. He is safe. But Claire, I am on my way, Claire said. She drove 6 blocks in what felt like 6 seconds and took the stairs 2 at a time and came through Mrs. Patterson's door to find Noah sitting on the floor against the couch with his sketchbook pressed against his chest like a shield. She crossed the room and dropped to her knees in front of him and took his face in both hands. Look at me. Are you hurt? He shook his head. Did he touch you? Another shake. His eyes were dry but enormous. The pupils blown wide with the particular shock of a child who has already survived too much and now has to survive more. Okay, she said. You are okay. I have got you. She held him there on Mrs. Patterson's floor with the afternoon light going flat outside the windows and her mind locked onto one fixed point. Derek had gone to Noah's school. The same day Callum had told her Derek understood the consequences. The warning had not reached him in time. Or it had reached him and he had decided to move before it could take hold. Either way, the message was clear. A conversation was not going to be enough. She pulled out her phone. Sitting on the floor with Noah pressed against her side, she typed a message to the unknown number that had called that morning. He went to Noah's school today. It needs to stop. I need to talk to Callum. The response came in 40 seconds. An address. And below it 2 words. Come tonight. She looked at the address. Then she looked at Noah, who was watching her with those enormous, careful eyes, waiting to understand what the world was going to do next. She thought about the word okay, the weight of it. She typed back, I am bringing my nephew. 4 seconds. Then, we have a room. Reeves will pick you up. Noah was watching her face. She put the phone in her pocket and looked at him steadily. How do you feel about a change of scenery? She said. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he opened his sketchbook to a blank page. He picked up his pencil. He wrote 2 words. Is it safe? Claire thought about Callum's voice, about okay, about the absolute unqualified certainty it had carried, about a man who had said someone showed up without conditions and called that everything. I think so, she said honestly. I think it might be the safest option we have right now. Noah looked at her, then he nodded. One small, deliberate nod, the kind that means I have thought about this and I have decided to trust you with it. He closed the sketchbook. He stood up. She stood up too. She took his hand. They walked out into the hallway together, and somewhere across the city, a black car was already on its way. The car pulled through iron gates that opened without anyone touching them, and Claire felt Noah's hand tighten around hers. She squeezed back, did not say anything. There was nothing to say that would not sound like a performance of reassurance, and Noah had always been able to tell the difference between what was true and what was constructed to sound true. He had been able to tell that since before he stopped speaking, since before Maya died. It was simply the way he was built. The mansion sat north of the city on enough land that the nearest neighbor was a suggestion rather than a presence. Not luxury for its own sake. Distance. Buffer. The particular privacy of a man who had spent his entire adult life making sure there was always space between himself and the next threat. The building was old and large and lit from within in a way that made it look almost warm. Reeves opened the door. Noah climbed out first. The moment his feet hit the gravel, he stopped walking and looked up at the building, and whatever he saw, the scale of it, the quiet, the distance from everything he had ever known, made him go very still, in the way that with Noah could mean either terror or wonder. "It is big," Claire said because she had to say something. Noah looked at her. Then he looked back at the house. Then he reached for his sketchbook and balanced it against his forearm and wrote 2 words, "Do monsters live here?" Reeves, who had apparently been reading over the boy's shoulder, said in his low, careful voice, "No monsters. Just Mr. Vane. He is particular about noise after 9, so if you need anything before bed, ask before then." Noah considered this information with the gravity he brought to most things. Then he wrote, "What kind of particular?" Reeves looked at the notebook. Then he looked at Claire with an expression that said with surprising clarity for a man of very few words that he had not been briefed on 8-year-olds. "The quiet kind," Reeves said finally. Noah nodded, apparently satisfied, and walked toward the front door. Claire followed with both their bags. She had declined Reeves's offer to carry them on instinct and was halfway up the front steps when the door opened from the inside and Callum was standing there. No jacket this time. A dark shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. An expression that shifted when he saw Noah just slightly, just for a fraction of a second in a way Claire could not name, but recognized immediately as significant. The kind of shift that happens when something reaches a place a person does not usually allow things to reach. Noah stopped on the second step. He looked up at Callum. Callum looked down at him. Nobody spoke. This was partly because Noah did not speak, and partly because Callum understood with the instinct of someone who had spent a great deal of time reading rooms that filling this particular silence was exactly the wrong move. He simply held the door open and waited with the patience of a man who had learned patience the hard way and therefore meant it. Noah climbed the last 2 steps. He walked past Callum and into the house. Callum's eyes moved to Claire. She said very quietly, "Thank you for the room." "It has 2 beds," he said. "I assumed you would want to stay close to him." She had not expected that level of practical consideration. It caught her off guard in the way that small, specific kindnesses sometimes do when you have been operating so long without them that you have stopped accounting for the possibility. "Yes," she said. "Thank you." Inside the house was not what she had prepared herself for. She had braced for something aggressively expensive, the kind of wealth that announces itself in every surface. What she found instead was a home that was expensively furnished but lived in, a little austere. Spaces that had never quite decided what they were for, the way rooms feel when the person who lives in them has bought all the right things and still has not worked out how to make them mean something. A woman appeared in the front hall before Claire had time to look around. Compact, efficient. Winifred Freddy moving with the brisk certainty of someone who had run large households long enough that children, strangers, and emergencies were all simply logistics to be managed. She handed Noah a glass of warm milk and a plate of cookies with such decisive efficiency that he accepted both before he had time to form an objection. He looked at the cookies. He looked at Claire. Claire shrugged. Noah sat down in the nearest chair and ate. Freddie caught Claire's eye and gave her a small, firm nod that seemed to say children are considerably easier than men believe. Claire liked her immediately and without reservation. Callum led Claire to a sitting room off the main hall. The moment they were alone, she turned to him. "Tell me what is actually happening with Derek," she said. "The truth, not the version you edit for my comfort." He looked at her for a moment. "You want the unedited version? I want to know what I am dealing with." He sat down. She stayed standing. "Derek Hollis has a record," he said. Nothing that ever resulted in serious charges because he is careful, and he selects people who will not press forward. There are 3 other women who filed reports and withdrew them. 2 of them left the state. I know the pattern, Claire said. I have been living the pattern. What I want to know is why your warning did not hold today. Because he moved faster than I anticipated, Callum said, and he said it with a controlled flatness she understood immediately as his particular version of being furious with himself. He went to the school within hours of our conversation last night before my people had established a proper perimeter around his movements. Your people, she said. Yes. And now? Now he is being watched. Every movement, every call. That sounds like something that should have happened yesterday. Yes, he said. It should have. No deflection, no justification, just direct, undefended acknowledgement. She had expected excuses. The absence of them did not make her less angry, but it changed the shape of the anger into something she was not sure what to do with. What do we do now, she said. You stay here, both of you, until this is resolved. How long is that? As long as it takes, she shook her head. Noah has school. I have work. I cannot suspend our lives indefinitely because… Claire. He said her name for the first time without the formal title, and it stopped her the way his voice always stopped things. Not loudly, just completely. Derek went to that school today, he said. He will try again. And the next time my people may not be in position in time. He held her gaze. I am not asking you to give up your life. I'm asking you to let me keep you and that child alive long enough for this to be permanently resolved. She stood there. She breathed. She thought about Noah writing in "Is it safe" on a blank page and the way he had nodded like he was handing her something heavy to carry on his behalf. Fine, she said, but I have ground rules. He nodded. Noah does not see anything he should not see. Whatever you do, whoever comes and goes from this house, that child sees none of it. Agreed. I keep working, remote arrangements. But I contribute. I am not sitting here doing nothing. I have never been kept, and I am not starting now. I will arrange for you to manage the vein staffing remotely, he said. It is real work. It pays. I told you I am not taking. It is the job I offered you yesterday, he said. Before any of this. Take it or leave it. She almost argued. Then she thought about the electric bill and the school shoes and said fine. Noah's schooling, she said. If we are here more than a few days, there is a tutor I use for the children of certain associates, Callum said. Certified. Good with children. She can come here. You have this all figured out, Claire said. I have been thinking about it since this morning, he said simply. The first week inside the mansion was the strangest week of Claire Donovan's life. She woke every morning expecting to feel like a prisoner, and instead felt something she did not have a clean word for, something adjacent to held, as though the walls were not keeping her in so much as keeping something out. And that distinction, she discovered, made an enormous difference in how a space felt, in what it was possible to breathe inside. Noah took to the house with a quiet adaptability that surprised her and then did not, because Noah had survived losing his mother, 17 months of silence, and an attempted abduction, and perhaps after all that, a large house with good cookies and a woman named Freddie, who slipped him extra hot chocolate, was not the most challenging adjustment he had ever made. He started drawing again. Not the scattered, compulsive marks of the past months, the kind that looked less like art and more like trying to get something out of his system, but actual pictures. Detailed ones with backgrounds and characters and something that looked almost like narrative. Claire found one on the kitchen table on the 4th morning, 3 figures standing together, all of them facing the same direction. She stood over it for a long time before she folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. She did not look at it again until she was alone. Callum was present in the house in a way she had not anticipated. She had expected him to be elsewhere managing whatever required managing, coming and going at strange hours, essentially absent in the way of men who have too many large things to attend to. Instead, he was there. Breakfast most mornings, dinner most evenings, not intrusively. He occupied his space with the same controlled economy he brought to everything, but consistently. In the way that she was beginning to understand was the only way Callum Vane knew how to be once he had decided something mattered. On the 5th evening, she came into the kitchen at 7 o'clock and stopped in the doorway. Callum was sitting at the table across from Noah. Both of them were bent over Noah's sketchbook. Callum was looking at a drawing Noah had pushed toward him. He was not speaking. He was simply looking with the careful attention he gave to everything. And Noah was watching him look with the particular stillness of a child waiting for a verdict on something that matters. Then Callum pointed at something in the drawing and raised an eyebrow. Noah's face did something. Claire gripped on the doorframe. It was not a smile. Not quite. It was the shadow of one. The shape a smile makes in the muscles around the mouth before the person wearing them has decided whether to commit to it. She had not seen that shape on Noah's face in 17 months. She had not been sure she would see it again. Noah took the sketchbook back and added something with quick, decisive pencil strokes and pushed it back across the table. Callum looked at the addition. He said very quietly, "That is better." Noah nodded with great seriousness. Claire went back down the hall before either of them saw her. She stood with her back against the wall and pressed her hand over her mouth and breathed through her nose until the feeling passed because she could not cry in this house. Not yet. Not until she understood better what was safe and what was not. But the almost smile. 17 months. She had not seen it in 17 months. The call came on the morning of the 8th day. Reeves found her at 10 o'clock while she was working through the staffing spreadsheet, and his face had the specific neutrality it carried when the news was bad, and he was deciding how fast to deliver it. "Derek made bail," he said. Claire set down her coffee. "He was arrested yesterday afternoon. One of our people caught him attempting to access your apartment building. He was held overnight. Someone posted bail for him this morning, earlier than anticipated." She stood up. "Someone is helping him. It appears so." Reeves paused. "There is something else. We identified a security employee hired 6 weeks ago, before you arrived here. What about him? He was feeding information to a man named Conrad Steele. Someone had planted him here before we knew you were coming. This was not a reaction to your situation. It was preparation." The room went very quiet. "He knew about Noah," Reeves said. "The sketchbooks, the blue he mentioned wanting, the room facing east. Specific things that could only come from inside this house." Claire did not move for a moment. Then she said, "I need to talk to Callum. Now." Callum came in 4 minutes. He looked at her face and said without preamble, "We are handling it." "The employee," she said, "the one feeding information to Conrad Steele. He knew about Noah. He knew specific things. Someone planned this before I even arrived here." Callum's jaw was tight. "Yes. Who is Conrad Steele?" "He runs operations on the south side of the city," Callum said. "We have a history. He is using Derek to divide my attention while he moves on other interests. And he planted someone inside my house to make sure he had leverage if the distraction was not enough." "You suspected someone like this might exist," she said. "From the beginning." "I suspected interference from outside," he said. "I did not know the shape of it yet. That is not the same as knowing and not telling you." She looked at him. "Is that the distinction that matters right now?" He was quiet for a beat. "No," he said. "You are right. I should have told you earlier what I suspected. I was managing it instead of sharing it, and those are not the same thing." She had expected deflection. The absence of it did not dissolve her anger, but it changed its temperature. "The employee," she said. "He is gone. Removed from the property an hour ago," Callum said. "He will not be a problem." And Conrad Steele, that, Callum said, is what I need to deal with tonight, which is why we need to move you and Noah to the safe house now. Not tomorrow, tonight. "How long?" "Days. A week at most." "You said that about this," she said. "This situation evolved unexpectedly." He said it without excuse. "I know that is not reassuring." "No," she agreed. "It is not." She looked at him. He was watching her with the particular attention he always gave her. Not invasive, simply present in the way that most people were not. "Noah is finally starting to settle," she said. "He drew a picture this morning of a dog he wants to name Thursday. He has not wanted anything specific in over a year." Callum said nothing. "I am not telling you that to make you feel guilty," she said. "I am telling you because if we move him again, it has to be the last time. I cannot keep uprooting him. He needs to land somewhere." "He will," Callum said. "You have my word on that." She searched his face. He was not a man who performed certainty. When he said something with that particular weight, it was a statement of something he had already decided and intended to execute. "Okay," she said. He nodded, he took out his phone and stepped into the hallway, and when he came back, he said, "We leave in 2 hours. Freddie will help with Noah. Pack what matters." "I can pack for both of us," she said. "I know," he said, "but Freddie wants to. She has decided she is attached to him." Claire almost smiled. "He has that effect." "Yes," Callum said, and the way he said it quiet without any of his usual armor told her that Noah had had that effect on more than just Freddie. She went to find Noah. He was in the sitting room working on a drawing with the focused private intensity that meant he was in the middle of something he needed to finish. She sat next to him without speaking, the way she had learned to exist alongside his concentration without interrupting it. He showed her the newest version of the drawing without her asking. He had added something to the three figures. Above them in careful pencil lines, a roof. Simple, rough, certain. The way children draw the thing they want most. Not a building in any architectural sense. Just a shelter. Just the idea of one. She put her arm around him and pulled him close. He leaned in without resistance, the way he only did when he was tired enough to stop managing his own feelings from a safe distance. Outside, the afternoon was going gray, and somewhere between here and Lake Michigan, whatever was coming was already in motion. The safe house smelled like old wood and lake water, and the particular quiet of a place built to keep the world at distance. They arrived after midnight. Noah had been asleep against Claire's shoulder before the car cleared the city, and he stayed asleep through the transfer, Reeves carrying him inside with a gentleness that Claire noted and stored, because men who handled sleeping children carefully were telling you something true about themselves, whether they intended to or not. She followed through a house she could only register in pieces. Stone floors, a fire already lit in the main room, windows that faced the lake and let in the sound of it even through glass. Callum had not come with them. He had put them in the car himself, had checked the door locks, had spoken to Reeves in a low voice that Claire had not been able to hear, and then he had stepped back from the car window and looked at her with an expression she could not fully read. Something between resolution and something rarer than that, something he closed down before it finished forming. "You are not coming," she had said through the glass. "I will be there by morning," he said. "There are things I need to close from this end first. Conrad and I need to reach an understanding. Tonight." She had wanted to ask more. The car had moved before she could. Now it was 1 in the morning, and Noah was in the smaller bedroom, and Claire was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she was not drinking, listening to the lake outside and the guards she could feel but not see, and the silence that pressed in from all directions. She was thinking about the look on Callum's face through the car window. She had spent 8 days telling herself she did not know this man. That gratitude was not trust, and proximity was not connection, and the fact that he had made Noah almost smile once did not constitute a foundation for anything. She had told herself all of this with considerable discipline and reasonable success. And then he had looked at her through that car window, and all her discipline had done was make it very clear in stark and inconvenient detail exactly what she was working so hard not to feel. She drank the tea. It had gone cold. At 7 in the morning, a car came up the drive. Noah, awake since 6 and stationed at the front window, with his sketchbook, wrote one word and held it up without turning around. Him. Claire's shoulders dropped an inch. She had not realized how high she had been holding them. Callum came through the door, looking like a man who had not slept and had not planned to discuss it. His jacket was gone. There was a tension in his jaw that meant the night had not gone simply. But he was upright and present, and when Noah held up his sketchbook showing a rough drawing of a car on a road, clearly the vehicle he had just seen arrive, Callum looked at it and said, "Good likeness." This was objectively untrue because Noah had given the car 6 wheels, but Noah looked pleased regardless. Claire waited until Noah was occupied with Freddie, who had arrived at the safe house the previous evening, and then she pulled Callum into the hallway. "Conrad Steele," she said. "What happened last night?" "We reached an understanding," Callum said. "What kind of understanding?" "The kind that holds," he said. "Conrad will not fund Derek again. He will not interfere in anything connected to you or Noah. He has other problems now that will occupy his attention for some time. You gave the FBI what they needed on him." "I gave them what I had been collecting for 2 years," Callum said. "I simply chose last night as the appropriate moment to deliver it." She looked at him. "You were building a case against him before any of this started." "I build cases against people who represent ongoing threats," he said. Conrad has been one for several years. Your situation accelerated my timeline. And Derek, without Conrad's backing, angrier, Callum said, more isolated, more desperate than he was a week ago, which makes him more dangerous in the short term and easier to close permanently in the long term. That is what you lead with, she said. The dangerous part, I lead with what is true. She turned away, then turned back. Every time you give me half an answer, you put me in the position of trusting you with incomplete information. I have been doing that. I have been trusting you in a situation where you hold most of the cards and so far you have earned it. But I need you to understand that it is not something I do easily or for free. I know, he said. Good. So tell me the whole truth about the next 72 hours. He looked at her. Then with the deliberateness of a man making a real choice, he spoke. Derek knows where his options have run out. The bail was his last external resource. He will move within the next 3 days or he will lose his nerve entirely. I believe he will move. I believe he will come here. I believe we are prepared for that. But I also believe in telling people the truth about what they are walking into. So there it is. He is going to come here, Claire said. Probably. You brought us to a place you think he is going to attack. I brought you to a place where I control every variable. There is a difference between the place a threat is expected and the place you are least protected. This is the first. Your apartment was the second. She thought about that, practically, without the luxury of panic. How many people outside? 2 inside, Callum said, one of whom is Reeves. And you and me. She nodded once. Then Noah cannot know. Nothing will happen to Noah, Callum said. I need you to hear that. Things you cannot guarantee. I am guaranteeing it, he said. And the quality of his voice when he said it was the same quality it had carried that first night in the restaurant office. Total, unqualified. The voice of a man who had decided something was going to be true and was in the process of making it so through the force of his intention. She believed him. She went back to Noah and spent the morning close to him, playing cards with a worn deck Freddie produced from a kitchen drawer, watching him draw, listening to Freddie tell a story about driving across Nevada with her sister in a car, with no air conditioning and a broken radio, and the way Noah listened with his chin in his hand and his pencil moving, and the particular expression he wore when something was going into the long-term part of his memory. Around noon, Noah fell asleep on the couch. Claire sat with him until his breathing steadied, and then she went to find Callum. He was in a room at the back of the house with Reeves and a third man she did not know, all 3 of them standing over a table with something spread between them. They did not hear her come in. Moving faster than predicted, the third man was saying, "We picked him up on a highway camera 40 minutes ago. He is not alone." Claire's blood dropped 10 degrees. Callum's head came up. He saw her face. He straightened immediately. How close, he said to the third man. Under an hour, came the answer. Callum looked at Claire. His voice did not change. Go back to Noah. Stay in that room. Lock the door. How close is he, she said. Claire. She held his gaze for one moment. Then she turned and went. She went with her heart hitting her cracked ribs and her hands very steady because her hands had learned a long time ago that shaking was not an option when Noah needed her. She went back to the room where Noah was sleeping. She locked the door. She sat on the floor with her back against it and listened. For 20 minutes, nothing. Then the quality of the silence changed in the way that silence changes when people outside are moving with purpose and without sound. Noah stirred. He opened his eyes and looked at her on the floor, and she saw the exact moment he understood. Because children who have already survived disaster have a very finely tuned instrument for detecting when it is happening again. She got up from the floor and sat on the bed next to him and took his face in both hands. Listen to me, she said quietly. We are going to stay in this room right here together, and everything is going to be fine. He looked at her with those enormous, careful eyes. He reached for his sketchbook. She gently put her hand over it. Not right now, she said. Right now, just look at me. Okay. He looked at her. Good. Keep looking at me. She counted seconds in her head, filling her mind with numbers, so there was no room for anything else. She held Noah's hand and he held hers back with a grip that was stronger than she always remembered it being. Then glass broke. Somewhere toward the front of the house, a single sharp impact that could have been almost anything, was very clearly one specific thing. Noah's grip went crushing tight. It is okay, she whispered. It is okay. I have got you. A sound like a door giving way. Shouting muffled by walls' direction, impossible to determine. Then a single sharp crack that she recognized because you always recognize that sound once you have heard it in the context of your own life being in danger. Noah made no sound. He pressed his face against her shoulder and she wrapped both arms around him and put herself between him and the door with the automatic, unthinking certainty of someone who had decided a long time ago what she was willing to spend herself on. More sounds. Running. Something heavy hitting the floor. Another shot, then quiet. A quiet that was different from the quiet before. Full instead of empty. The quiet of something finished rather than something waiting. She held Noah. She did not move. She did not breathe in any way that made a sound. Then from the other side of the door, 3 knocks, a pause, 2 more, Callum's knock. He had established it 2 days ago in passing without explanation, and she had noted it and stored it the way she stored everything essential. She did not move immediately. Say something, she said through the door. A beat. Then his voice. Noah wants a dog named Thursday. She unlocked the door. Callum was standing in the hallway. There was blood on Reeves's arm, behind him not a catastrophic amount, a cut probably glass. Callum himself was upright and present and wearing the particular after quality of a man coming down from something necessary and not entirely clean. Derek, she said. Being detained, Callum said. Police have been called. The charges will hold this time. He is not getting out. You are sure? Conrad Steele is having a conversation with federal authorities tonight, Callum said. His ability to fund bail applications has permanently decreased. His eyes moved to Noah, who was standing in the doorway behind Claire. Hey, kid. Noah looked at him. He looked at the blood on Reeves's arm. He looked at Callum's face. Then he reached back without looking and picked up his sketchbook from the bed and held it against his chest. Then he stepped around Claire and walked to Callum and stood directly in front of him. Callum crouched down to eye level. He said nothing. He waited. Noah held out the sketchbook open to a page. Callum looked at it. Claire watched from the doorway. She saw something move through Callum's face that his control could not contain. A sudden, unguarded thing there and gone, but real. Undeniably real. The kind of expression that appears when something reaches a place a person has kept closed for a very long time, and the door opens before they have a chance to decide whether to allow it. She looked at the page from where she stood. She could see enough. It was the 3-figure drawing, the one that had been growing since the first night at the mansion. 3 distinct people now detailed and recognizable, and above them more certain than before, more deliberate, not just roof lines, but a whole house. And around the house, water. And above the water and the house, in the 3 people, something new. Stars. He had added stars above all of them. Added them tonight in this room while she was counting seconds and listening to the world outside come apart and holding on to what mattered. Callum looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then Noah reached out and with one small, deliberate hand pointed at the largest of the 3 figures. Then he pointed at Callum. The silence stretched. Callum's jaw moved. He pressed his lips together. He nodded once, and the nod was the most unarmored thing Claire had ever seen from him. A man receiving something he had not known he was waiting for. Yeah, Callum said quietly. Okay. Claire put her hand over her mouth. She stood in the doorway of a lake house in January and watched the most dangerous man she had ever met accept something a child had decided to give him, and she understood, in the particular way that you understand things that have already happened before you can think about them, that the world she had walked into 17 days ago was not a temporary arrangement. It was the place she had been trying to get to all along. She just had not known it had a name yet. The police came and went in the particular efficient way that police come and go when someone has made certain calls before calling them. 2 officers. A brief conversation with Reeves in the front room. Forms signed and collected with the minimum amount of ceremony the situation required. Derek Hollis was walked out in handcuffs through the front door of the safe house and into the back of a marked car, and the red and blue lights swept across the ceiling of the room where Claire sat with Noah until they were gone. She watched the lights go and felt nothing she had expected to feel. Not relief, not triumph, not the particular satisfaction she had imagined in darker moments over the past 17 months would come when this was finally over. What she felt instead was something quieter and more complicated. The way you feel at the end of something that cost you more than you had planned to spend. Not empty, not full, just changed in ways you have not finished measuring yet. Noah sat beside her on the couch with his sketchbook open on his knees, drawing something she could not see. His breathing was steady. His hands were not shaking. She watched him draw and thought he is going to be okay. She had thought that before in the worst moments of the past year and a half as a kind of prayer, a statement of intention rather than fact. Tonight, for the first time, it felt like something closer to an observation. Reeves appeared in the doorway. He looked at Claire and said that Callum wanted to see her when she was ready. She looked at Noah. He was absorbed in whatever he was making. Freddie was in the kitchen, 12 feet away, moving pots with the unhurried efficiency of someone who believed that the best thing for a difficult night was a hot meal and was in the process of proving it. I will be back in a few minutes, Claire told Noah. He nodded without looking up. Then, without lifting his pencil from the page, he held up one hand briefly in a small, acknowledging gesture that meant, I heard you. I am fine, go. She went. Callum was outside. She found him on the back steps of the safe house, sitting with his forearms on his knees and a cup of coffee he was not drinking, looking out at Lake Michigan. In the dark, you could not see the water, but you could hear it, patient and enormous and indifferent to everything that had happened in this house tonight. She sat down next to him, not close, just near. He did not look up when she sat. He did not seem surprised. He simply made room in the way people make room for someone they expected. They sat in silence for a moment. The night was cold in the particular way that January nights near the lake are cold, not just low temperatures, but a dampness that gets into the layers. Claire pulled her jacket tighter and looked at the darkness where the water was. How is your arm? She said. He glanced down at the cut Reeves had taken. It was Reeves, he said, not me. I know, I meant how are you? He was quiet long enough that she thought he might leave it there. Then he said, I have been better. I have been considerably worse. She nodded. That seemed like an honest answer. Does it ever? She said and stopped. Started again? Does it get easier? The things you have to do in a life like yours, the things that happen in hallways in the middle of the night. He looked at the dark water for a moment. Not easier, he said. More familiar. Those are not the same thing. No, she agreed, they are not. She thought about something she had been turning over since the night in his office when he had told her about his father, about the particular shape of a person who has carried something heavy for long enough that they have reorganized themselves around the weight of it. What do you want, she said. Not for me, not for Noah, for yourself. What does Callum Vane want when nobody is watching and there is nothing left to protect or manage or control? He was very still for a moment. Then he said, I want what that drawing in there has in it. He meant Noah's drawing, the house, the three people, the stars. I want to have built something that does not require me to be dangerous in order to exist. He stopped. I want to stop being the only thing standing between the people I care about and everything that wants to take them. Claire looked at him. You have been the only thing for a long time, she said. Since I was 9 years old, he said. Yes. She thought about a small boy standing in a doorway saying thank you to a woman who had not waited for it, about what it meant to carry that long, about what it cost. You do not have to be the only thing anymore, she said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked the way he had looked at her in the alley that first night, the way that felt like being filed away permanently. But different now, not the assessment of a man calculating a liability, something unguarded, something that had been earning its way toward the surface for 17 days and had finally arrived. I know, he said. That is what frightens me most about this. She did not look away. Good, she said. It should. That means you understand what it is. They sat in the dark with the lake between them and the house behind them, and Noah safe inside it, and neither of them said anything for a long time, which was exactly the right amount of words for what was between them now. Not love yet, not named yet, but something that had begun somewhere between an alley and a drawing and a man who crouched to eye level with a broken child and waited without filling the silence. Something real. Something that did not have a clean exit. The morning after Derek Hollis was taken away in handcuffs, Noah spoke. Not a full sentence. Not even a full word. A sound soft and deliberate directed at Freddie when she set his breakfast down. Something that started in his throat and came out shaped like thank you, blurred at the edges, but unmistakably intentional, unmistakably directed at another person. Freddie's hand on the plate went still. Noah looked up at her with those enormous eyes, waiting with the particular patience of a child who has just done something significant and is watching to see what the world does with it. Freddie did exactly the right thing. "You are very welcome," she said in a completely normal voice, as though he spoke to her every morning. Then she went to the counter and stood with her back to the room for a moment, and her shoulders moved once. And then she turned back around and asked if he wanted more orange juice. He nodded. She poured it. Claire was standing in the doorway. She had to grip the frame to stay upright. She did not say anything. She did not make it an event because Noah had made it deliberately small and quiet, and she understood that meant he needed it to remain that way. She walked to the table and sat across from him and poured her own coffee and looked at her phone as though nothing had shifted on its axis. Her hands were shaking, the good kind of shaking, the kind she had not felt in a very long time. Callum came in 20 minutes later, and she caught his eye across the table and gave him the smallest nod, just a fraction of movement, and she watched him understand it completely without being told anything. He sat down. He accepted coffee from Freddie. He opened the newspaper he had brought in from the front step and read it in silence. None of them spoke about it. The kitchen held the four of them in the particular kind of quiet that is not empty at all. The best morning Claire could remember in over a year. The legal machinery around Derek moved fast once it started moving. Sloane Whitfield arrived at the safe house 2 days later. She was sharp in the particular way of women who have spent years in courtrooms and have learned that precision is its own form of power. She wore her suits like equipment. She laid out the case against Derek Hollis on the kitchen table with the efficiency of someone who finds injustice genuinely offensive and has organized her professional life around making it expensive. Breaking and entering, assault, violation of a protective order, attempted abduction of a minor, and several additional items connected to Conrad Steele's operations that had Derek's name on them in ways Derek had not been careful enough to avoid. 7 to 10 years minimum, Sloane said, depending on how he pleads, if he contests it longer. Claire absorbed this, and the custody question, his claim to Noah. Legally non-existent, Sloane said without hesitation. He was never listed as a guardian. He established no paternity. He had no biological or legal claim to the child. Whatever he told himself or others about his relationship to your family, the courts will not recognize it. She paused. What I would recommend now is formalizing your own guardianship arrangement. You have been operating on informal terms since your sister's death. We should make it official. I have been trying to do that since Maya died, Claire said. The paperwork kept getting delayed. It will not be delayed anymore, Sloane said. I will handle it personally. She glanced briefly toward the hallway and then back at Claire. Mr. Vane asked me to treat it as a priority. Claire looked at the hallway, then back at Sloane. He asked you this morning, she said. It was not a question. Before you were awake, Sloane confirmed, closing her briefcase with a clean snap. Tell him yourself. I suspect he is nearby. He was in the hallway. Claire came through the kitchen door and nearly walked into him. He caught her by the arm, steadied her, released her immediately. Sloane told you, he said. You did the paperwork without asking me. I did the preliminary steps, he said. You still have to sign everything. I was not trying to take the choice from you. I was clearing the path. She looked at him. How did you know it had not been finalized? Your background report. From the morning after we met, he said. Yes, right. She almost smiled. The morning after we met, before I had agreed to anything. I wanted to understand your situation, he said. You wanted to understand what you were getting into. Both things, he said honestly. She looked at him for a long moment in the hallway of that lake house with the morning coming through the windows and Noah's voice still present in her memory, small and deliberate and shaped like gratitude. This man had been in her life for less than a month and had rearranged it entirely. Not violently, not by force, by showing up, by being consistently, inconveniently, undeniably present, by asking what she needed before telling her what he intended to do. I need to ask you something, she said, and I need the honest answer, even if you think it will upset me. All right, when this is over, when Derek is sentenced and the paperwork is done and the immediate danger is behind us, what did you expect to happen? With us, with where we live. What did you see when you thought about how this ended? He was quiet long enough that she began to regret asking. Then he said, I did not let myself think about it. Why not? Because I was afraid, he said, that if I thought about what I wanted, I would start making decisions based on what I wanted instead of what was right for you and Noah. She stared at him. I am afraid of things constantly, he said without drama. I have simply had a great deal of practice not showing it. She leaned against the wall, crossed her arms, thought about the almost smile on Noah's face at the kitchen table, about the blue room painted overnight, about a drawing growing more detailed and more certain over 3 weeks, adding stars above everyone. Noah spoke this morning, she said. To Freddie. 2 syllables. Thank you. Something moved through his face, raw and fast. I know, he said. Freddie told me. She cried about it in the laundry room for 20 minutes. Claire laughed, short and real, and the kind that surprised her. Freddie cried. She also told me he drew a picture of her last night and gave it to her without being asked. He does that, Claire said. He gives drawings to people he has decided matter. I know, Callum said quietly. She looked at him. Which one did he give you, the one with the stars? Of course it was. She uncrossed her arms. He gave you the original. Yes. She stood in the hallway and looked at this man who had pulled her off the ground of a rain-soaked alley and put himself between Derek Hollis and an 8-year-old boy and sat on back steps in January darkness and told her the truth about what he was afraid of. And she made a decision. Not a careful one, not a calculated one. The other kind. The kind she almost never allowed herself because she had learned early and repeatedly that the careful decisions were the ones that kept you alive, and the other kind were the ones that cost you. But she was tired of surviving. She had been surviving for 17 months, and she was very, very tired of it. I am not going back to my apartment, she said. He went very still. I am not saying I know exactly what this is between us, she said. I am not saying I have it figured out, or that I am not terrified about approximately 17 different aspects of your life and what it means to exist near it. She met his eyes. But Noah is drawing us as a family, and he spoke this morning. And whatever this is, whatever you and I are in the middle of something, is doing something right. And I am not walking away from something that is doing something right just because it is complicated. Callum looked at her for a long time. My world is not safe, he said. Not in the way you deserve. Not in the way Noah deserves. There will be other situations. Other complications I cannot fully predict. I know that. And you are still. I am still, she said. He breathed. Just breathe for a moment the way a person breathes when they have been holding something heavy for a very long time and someone has just told them they can set it down. Okay, he said. The same word, the first word. The word she had built an entire new life on without realizing she was doing it. Okay, she said back. 3 weeks later, the mansion felt different. Not in any way she could have pointed at specifically. Same rooms, same furniture, same Freddie appearing with food at precisely calibrated intervals. Same Reeves moving through the house with the unhurried efficiency of someone whose job was to be everywhere necessary and nowhere conspicuous. But different in the way that spaces change when the people inside them stop treating them like temporary arrangements and start simply living in them. Noah had claimed the room with the east-facing window. He kept his sketchbooks on the windowsill in a row ordered by some system only he fully understood. He had started leaving drawings in common areas of the house, not for display, but the way someone leaves traces of themselves in a place they have decided belongs to them. A drawing of the kitchen table left on the kitchen table. A drawing of the back garden left on the bench in the back garden. The house was learning his language. Then one Wednesday morning, Noah came downstairs and stopped in the doorway of his room. The walls were blue, not any blue. The specific blue of the sky in the 20 minutes after sunrise before the full light of morning arrives, that particular shade that is between night and day that exists briefly and then is gone. The color Noah had written about once in his sketchbook months ago in a single line and never mentioned again. He stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he went down the hall and found Callum at his desk. He stood in front of him without writing anything. Just stood there. Callum looked up. Noah looked at him. His face did something that was not quite a smile and was not anything else either. It was the expression of a person who has received something they did not ask for and did not know they needed and do not have words for yet. Then he said out loud in a voice that was small and slightly rough from 17 months of disuse, but absolutely clear in its intention, thanks. One word. That was all. Callum sat at his desk for a full minute afterward without moving. Freddie, who had been passing in the hallway later, told Claire She had stood outside the door and counted to 60 before walking on. Claire, when she heard about it, went to find something to do in the kitchen until she was sure her face was in order. It took longer than she expected. The guardianship papers arrived on a Thursday. Sloane Whitfield delivered them personally, which Claire suspected had less to do with professional protocol and more to do with Sloane wanting to witness the signing herself. Claire sat at the kitchen table and signed every page with the careful hand of someone who understands that ink on paper sometimes carries more weight than the words it makes. When she finished, she set down the pen and looked at the stack of documents for a moment. "He is officially yours," Sloane said. "Legally, completely without condition." "He always was," Claire said. "This is just the part the world can see." Sloane shook her hand. "He is lucky to have you." Claire thought about Noah drawing stars above all of them. "I think it goes both ways," she said. After Sloane left, Claire sat at the kitchen table with the signed documents in front of her and felt the particular silence of a thing finally finished. Not the silence of an ending, the silence of a foundation. Noah came in 20 minutes later. He had his sketchbook under his arm and the expression he wore when he had decided something and was not uncertain about it. He sat down across from her and placed the sketchbook on the table and turned it around so it faced her. She looked at the drawing. It was the best thing he had ever made, technically beyond anything she had seen from him before. Depth and shadow and a sense of light coming from a specific direction. The house was this house rendered with the kind of attention that meant he had looked at it carefully and drawn what he actually saw rather than what he thought a house should look like. Lake Michigan was visible behind it, suggested in horizontal lines that somehow communicated enormity. Above the house stars, 3 people outside of the front door, distinct and recognizable. A dog sitting at the feet of the smallest figure, not real yet, but clearly intended a specific dog with specific markings. And below the drawing in his careful, deliberate handwriting, "My family." Claire looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at Noah. He was watching her with the expression she was learning to recognize as his most honest one. Open, undefended. The face he wore when he had decided something was true and was not ashamed of it. "This is us," she said. He nodded. "All of us," he nodded again. She turned the sketchbook back toward him. "Will you sign it?" she said. "Artists sign their work." He considered this with the gravity he brought to most things. Then he picked up his pencil and in the bottom right corner of the page wrote in the careful, deliberate hand she knew as well as her own, "N. Donovan." Age 8, she looked at the name. Not the name he had been born with. Not Maya's name. Hers. He had signed it with her name, chosen it without being asked, made it official in the only way that actually mattered to him. She pressed her lips together. "Thank you," she said in the same careful, ordinary voice Freddie had used the morning he first spoke. As though this were something that happened every day. As though children chose you all the time, and it did not cost you everything to receive it. She was going to cry about it later in the bathroom with the door locked and the tap running. But not now. Callum came in from the hallway and stopped when he saw them both at the table. His eyes went to the sketchbook. Noah, without looking up, pushed it across the table toward him. Callum sat down. He looked at the drawing for a long time. He looked at the figures, the house, the water, the stars. He looked at the name in the bottom corner, and something in his face went very still. In the way that faces go still when something has reached a place that does not usually receive things. He looked up at Noah. "Can I keep this one?" Noah thought about it with appropriate solemnity. Then he nodded once. Callum closed the sketchbook carefully. "Thank you," he said. Noah shrugged with the elaborate casualness of a child who is very moved and working hard to appear otherwise. Then he slid off his chair and went to find Freddie following the smell of something with cinnamon coming from the kitchen. Claire and Callum sat across the table from each other with the sketchbook between them. "He is going to be okay," Claire said. "Not a question. Not anymore." "Not anymore," Callum agreed. "Because he feels safe. Because he is safe," Callum said. "There is a difference." She looked at him. "You really believe that? After everything you know about how fast things can change?" "I spent a long time building safety as a structure," he said. "Walls and systems and distance. Things I could measure." He was quiet for a moment. "I did not understand until recently that safety is not a structure. It is a decision. You decide someone is not going to be harmed, and then you build everything else around that decision." He looked at the sketchbook on the table between them. Children understand that before adults do. They always know the real thing when they encounter it. Claire reached across the table and put her hand over his. He looked down at her hand. Then he turned his over and held it. Not tightly, just held the way you hold something you are no longer afraid of losing. Outside, Lake Michigan moved in the dark in its patient, ancient way. The cinnamon smell was getting stronger from the direction of the kitchen. Somewhere down the hall, Noah was already stationed at Freddie's elbow, watching the process with his focused private attention. Reeves was in the entryway, managing something logistical in the low-efficient voice he brought to everything. The guards outside were changing rotation. This was the world. Callum's world, with all its edges and shadows and things Claire would never entirely know. She had looked at it clearly. She had not looked away. And in the middle of it, a kitchen table, a sketchbook, a boy who had signed his name as Donovan. In the bottom right corner of a picture of a house with stars above it and a dog that did not yet exist, but would someday soon when the right moment arrived. N. Donovan, age 8. It was the truest thing in the room. It was the truest thing any of them had.